Good morning. Happy Saturday. I'm so happy you're here. I have a wonderful guest today. I have Amanda Decker here with me. And if you're not familiar with her, she is amazing. I got a chance to meet her very briefly last year at Low Carb for Better Health. I believe that was the second year she had done this conference. But let's go ahead and bring her over so she can tell you all about herself because she's awesome. Welcome, Amanda. Thank you for
Good
being here.
morning. Good morning.
I'm glad you are here. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
Absolutely.
I want to just take a minute and just kind of get an idea and help go over with the people that will be watching today. What's your background and how did you get here?
Yeah. So I am a nurse practitioner. It's a long story, as is most of us in this space. But I'm a nurse practitioner. I've been a nurse practitioner for 19 years now. I practice in semi-rural Tennessee. When I first started practicing, it was more rural than it is today. We seem to be filling up. I'm about an hour west of Nashville, where I'm located in a town called Dixon. It's where I grew up. My family farm is here. So I live on a multi-generational family farm with both of my siblings, my parents, and then my uncle is still alive. And we raise Black Angus cattle. That's kind of our side gig that we do there. And it's been a cattle farm off and on for, well, about 100 years, as long as it's been in my family. I've had the pleasure of knowing many, many members of my family all the way back to my great grandparents. But I knew at the age of 5 I wanted to go into healthcare. Most people don't know that, but my mom's like, Amanda, I totally remember you in there doctoring everybody, and you never had another. There was never a plan B. There was always, I'm going into healthcare. I'm going to make people better. This is what I want to do. So, fast forward, I was going to go to med school, and then I decided I didn't really want to spend that much time in school. I wanted to get out and have a life and have a family and do other things. And somebody said, "Hey, why don't you go to nurse practitioner school?" I said, "What is that?" And 5 years ago, NPs were not necessarily as prevalent as we are today. So I had no clue, but I read about it and learned about it. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. I want to be in the clinic. I don't want to be in the hospital and the surgery. I want to be in the clinic seeing people day in and day out. That gets me doing exactly what I want to do. So I did that. And for the first 12 years of my primary care career, so I practice in seeing the family, everybody from birth to the end of life kind of thing. The first 12 to 15 years were great. I had a couple of different jobs. I had a great following. Practice was going well. But I turned to the point where I just hated it. It's like, man, this is what I've wanted to do my entire life. And I hate it. Why do I hate it so much? And I hated it because nobody was getting better. The only people that I made better were those people who had urinary tract infections and sinus infections. Those were the only people that I was really helping. Everybody else is like, I am just a glorified drug dealer. Here is your next prescription. Here's the newest, best thing. Come back and see me in 3 months. We'll check your labs again and do this whole song and dance again. And I got to the point where I was ready to leave medicine because that just wasn't my dream. But I took a step back and it's like, I've made myself healthier in my health journey. Why can't I help my patients get healthier too? So I struggled with childhood obesity. If you look back at pictures, I was overweight even at that young age of 5 when I wanted to be a doctor. I remember my grandfather pinching my little cheek saying, "Oh, aren't you so cute and chubby?" And the chubby was the part that stuck out more than the cute part. On and off throughout my teenage years, young adult years, I would restrict and lose a lot of weight, and then I would gain it right back. So a lot of the whole calories in, calories out. And then in my early 30s, something changed. It's like, this isn't working for me anymore. I've got to do something different. And at first I didn't know it was low carb. I went back to the wisdom of my great grandmother, and she kind of said, "Hey, if you don't want to be chubby, don't eat biscuits and cookies." I was like, all right, I can do that. I can drop biscuits and cookies and breads and starches and just focus on eating some meat and some non-starchy veggies. It's like, it makes sense. Cut something and don't count calories. So I did that and I lost weight and I felt great. And I've been weight stable for 12, 14 years at this point. And throughout that journey, what started as weight for me propelled itself. And we can get into the other health issues that I've had down the road. But, I took that and I was like, all right, if I can do this for me, why can't I do it for my patients? So I kind of tested the waters and said, hey, why don't you try doing this? This is what I did. And they started losing weight. And then a friend of mine said, you're doing low carb. I was like, no, I'm not doing low carb. I'm not doing Atkins. I'm not doing that. And they're like, yeah, you are. And so I dove into the science at that point. I've read who knows how many different books. I've gotten 15 different letters behind my name. So I'm a certified metabolic health practitioner through the Metabolic Health Society. I went to the American Nutrition Association and became a certified ketogenic nutrition specialist. I hold a certification through the Obesity Medicine Association as a certified practitioner there. And I started using it in my clients, and then my practice changed. And I started helping people get better. And not everybody wanted to do it, but the people that stuck with me and partnered with me, they started getting off of diabetes medicines and off of blood pressure medicines and off of cholesterol medicines. And I was like, this is kind of what I've wanted to do all my life. This is much better. And I, at that point, realized I can't continue to do it here. I looked around me and I was sharing space with a pediatric nurse practitioner. So my adult clients that came in for weight management, I'm like, Amanda, there's a kid playing patty cake on my lap out in the lobby. I can't do this. I can't come in here. There's snot everywhere. It kind of smells a little bit. I don't want to, this is not nice. I was like, okay, I agree. So I approached my company that I work with, which is a multi-specialty practice here in Dixon. And I said, I need to grow this weight management side of things, and I can't do it here. Let me go buy my own building, redesign it, create it for an obesity medicine practice. And that's what I did about 4 years ago. We've been in the space for 3 years now. It's a big, open, beautiful space where there's church pews for people to sit in. My husband redid church pews, and so there's no armrest. Everyone can feel comfortable. The hallways are wide. The scale will always work. It's not in a place that's out for everybody to see you when you weigh in. It's homey. It doesn't feel like a clinic. It feels like a spa. You walk in and there's fireplace and hardwood floors, and there's music playing. You feel like you're in a welcoming environment. So that's where I'm at. And then I got into the whole conference thing because once again, I said, I'm helping one person at a time, but that's not getting me very far, very fast. So the idea for a conference came up, and I partnered with Dr. Kim Berry to make that happen. And he's been a big supporter of that. But it's a lot of work to do that conference, but it's well worth it. It's grown and it's taken off, and very exciting. So what else you want to know, man?
I had a great time at the conference last year. It was
Yeah.
it was the first one I have ever attended. So
Really?
yeah, so it was the
That's
first conference
awesome.
I ever attended. Yeah, and it was fascinating because it's not the normal thing you think about having a good time on a Saturday morning in the middle of the woods, listening to like lectures or talks, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it was entertaining. I got a chance to meet Dr. Westman,
Mhm.
someone that I've looked up to for many years. I think all of us, and
Mhm.
Ken Berry. Um, Nisha's speech last year was emotional for me. She talked about the nursing home side of things and everything, and I had a situation where my mom was in a nursing home the last part of her life, and
Mhm.
that's just one of those things that like really caught me off guard being in a place like that and being emotional and
Yeah.
um but fascinating because had I known, well, I don't even know if had I known what I know now then, could I have even have helped her?
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's like one of those things like could I made a difference even with the knowledge that I have now, just
Yeah.
with the restrictions in place at these kinds of facilities. But
Yeah.
so that was eye opening, and you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to get to come this year or not, but finances being as they are, but
Mm.
I'm excited to know. So you mentioned that you had, childhood obesity and
Mhm.
that you kind of slowly stumbled into low carb.
Mhm.
Um, and you also mentioned briefly that you had some other medical issues, some other issues. Is there anything that you wanted to elaborate on? Anything that it's
Yeah.
pertinent?
So I've been pretty open about it on my social media. I've had psoriasis, and I had that very young age as well. And psoriasis it's a skin condition. It's an inflammatory condition. It has some genetic components to it, but I didn't realize until probably a couple years ago that it also had a nutritional component to it. And it's so funny once you start learning how you change one condition, it just kind of stumbles into it. So at one point, I had psoriasis on at least 85% of my body. So now that doesn't mean complete coverage. That means 85% of my body. When you're talking about, they do this hands thing where like one hand is a percent kind of thing. 85% of it had some type of psoriasis plaque, some type of psoriasis on it. Um, when I went low carb, I also around that same time went on biologic medicine, which biologics are drugs that you inject in your body and it suppresses your immune system. I got completely clear of my psoriasis. It was the first time. It just happened to be at the same time that I was starting these lifestyle changes. And then, that thing called COVID hit, and I'm in healthcare. And I was thinking, oh my word, I cannot be on something that suppresses my immune system in the middle of a pandemic. I'm a mom. I have kids that I got to take care of. I have a staff. I have patients. I can't subject myself to that. And so I've made the decision to come off the biologic, thinking I'm probably going to have a huge flare of psoriasis. I'm probably going to go back down that road. But then I took a step back again and I said, all right, why don't I do everything I can to make the inflammation as low as I can in my body? So the time I went off the biologic medicine, I went carnivore. I did carnivore for 3 months during that time. Very strict. First month, beef, bacon, butter, and eggs. Second month, started to include other meats. Third month, started adding back little bits of cheeses. And then month 4, I started with the lowest inflammatory veggies that I could think of. Veggies and fruits like avocado was kind of where I started, and olives were the first things that I added back. And my psoriasis didn't come back. I will say I do have a teeny tiny patch still. I've had it for about a year. I mentioned at the conference last year at the base of my scalp that was brought on during a high stress moment in my life. It kind of cleared out, but none on my arms, none on my legs, none on my abdomen. I don't have to worry about, I can wear black clothes now, because before I couldn't wear, I'm not wearing it today because white makes me brighter, and that I'm on TV. I got to be brighter, but I couldn't wear black clothes for the longest time because of the flakes that would get on my clothes. And I was like, people are going to think I'm nasty and have dandruff when it's a condition I can't control. But it was very freeing. And still, I will notice, I can feel the inflammation build in my body during stress, or if I've gotten a little lax on my diet, which we all get a little lax from time to time, or I've eaten something that I thought was safe and turns out it wasn't safe. Like FYI, if you go to Panda Express, even if you're eating the meat and vegetables, there's wheat in what you're eating because it's in the sauce. So if I eat something like that, without knowing it, I'll start to itch within, moments of eating it at the spots where I had these psoriasis, the biggest plaques that were there. So that was my main issue. I also had some issues with after I had my child, I had my first child, he's 14, had a miscarriage. And that miscarriage left me with a very scarred condition in my uterus. And I was not supposed to carry more children. There's a whole lot of backstory there with it too, but I ended up getting pregnant again and carrying a child, completely normal pregnancy, 2-term, wonderful kiddo. And I attribute that, looking back, I didn't think it at the time, but looking back, I think it's because I had gotten myself in a healthier place. My uterus is still scarred. My GYN has no idea how I carried a baby, but I did. So other than the grace of God and the goodness of God and the fact that I'd gotten myself healthier and kept my inflammatory levels extremely low, I don't know how else my other little kiddo is here today. So those are my main things, the main things that have bothered me. But I've seen this change other people's lives with their chronic conditions too. So once I started, it bled over to my family. Like my sister has migraine disorder and IBS. She's had those her entire life. Now, she didn't struggle with obesity like I did. She was always that bean pulse size 0. I was the odd man out in my family. My brother was a beanpole too. He's kind of one of those things. One of these things doesn't look like the other. That was me. But she had these other conditions. And when I went low carb, she's kind of like, well, maybe I should get healthier too. Because I don't need it for weight, but maybe I should get healthier too. So she started diving into it and reading up on it on her own. And now she doesn't need medicines for migraines. She says she can tell when her migraine's coming, but it never kind of kicks in. And her gut has never felt better in her life. And same with my brother. He had Crohn's disease and controls it largely with diet, with avoiding grains and inflammatory foods and managing stress and lifestyle and things like that. My mom reversed her type 2 diabetes. She got off osteoporosis medicine. She rebuilt bone function or built bone strength by changing her diet. So, all these chronic conditions, they can change, and even if you don't think they can. And it just amazed me how this trickle effect has happened.
Yeah, my stepdaughter, she has the psoriasis,
Yes.
and prior to being keto, she's never done keto. So she had kind of moved out of our house at the time. Right around that time she moved out is when we went keto. Then like our younger boys, they went keto with us by proxy, right? So
Mm,
we just didn't cook anything, didn't bring anything in the house.
yeah.
But before that, we were buying coconut oil for her to rub into her scalp because
Yeah.
it made it go away.
Yeah.
And it was better than medication, and she would rub it on her elbows and stuff. And then, and he'd be like, well, if that works. And then hey, she's, I'm not doing that. I'm like, it's frustrating, but I mean, you can't force it on
It's
somebody.
their
And she
choice.
doesn't live here. And,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's just, that you see so many people like healing gut health and psoriasis and all these things going away. One of the things that I tell people now when it comes to this lifestyle is, you kind of show up for whatever was ailing you, whether it was weight loss or, some kind of IBS or
Mhm.
whatever, and you stay for everything else. So
Yeah.
like for me, I got here because of weight loss, and then I found mental clarity and
Mm.
food control and all of these things that are truly so much more than just weight, because
Yeah.
weight is a factor of so many other things, but it's just one of the like, and people, I see so many people like, oh, you just talk about it all the time.
How
Well,
can
I
you
mean,
not?
yeah, it's like, how can you not? And then, people are like throw words around like zealot and stuff like that or
Yeah.
whatever. But I'm like, I try not to be that way. So, um,
No, I get it though, man. I've got people that I've been their primary care provider for a long time, but they're leaving my practice because they're getting tired of me asking them what they're doing to make their lives healthier. And, me telling them, I really think you should try going sugar and grain free for a while. I don't even tell them keto or low carb. I'm like, just try 30 days going sugar and grain free and seeing what difference it makes. Does it improve your psoriasis and blood pressure and all these other things? But I mean, I've got people leaving because they're like, they don't want to be a part of that. So,
it is, it's crazy because like, like you in the beginning, you mentioned that you got a chance to know your great grandparents, and I did too.
mhm,
I got to spend a lot of time with my great grandmother and grandfather. And
mhm,
I saw, even as a child, I would see things that she was doing with her diet that
mhm,
didn't make a lot of sense to me because her doctor told her to. So like she would have the cottage cheese, and she'd strain the whey away from the curds, and she'd have
mhm.
like, like the low calorie bread, which was just thinner bread.
Yeah.
And then she would eat them. They had margarine instead of butter. And you knew that she was born in
Mhm,
1912. She
mhm,
didn't grow up on margarine. She grew up on
mhm,
butter.
mhm,
And she was probably healthier with the butter. And it's
mhm.
just those things that are so strange to see how it's within that generation,
Yeah.
from like my great grandparents into my grandmother, my mother to me, how everything is completely shifted, and now we're fighting to shift it back.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Which I don't really know that I want everybody doing exactly everything their doctors tell them to do today.
Yes.
That's not something that we want, but we're stuck in this sick mentality of everybody just thinks this is the way it is and there's nothing they can do about it. diabetes is just something that happens because it happened to my mom, and blood pressure is just something that happens because it runs in my family. And I'm like, no, our genetics can very much, I mean, I'm in the South, so forgive me for this explanation, but genetics very much can load that gun. It can put the bullet in the chamber, but
Yeah, yeah.
something else is pulling that trigger. Something else is making that go off and making it happen. And that is, how we're treating our body, what we're putting in our body, how we move our body. Are we resting our body? Are we chronically living in stress and in a high impact world where we're just going, going, going? All those things are what actually pulls the trigger for the majority of chronic conditions.
If you see, like, the explanation is, we have a family history of diabetes.
Mhm.
Would you have a family history of eating bad or
Yeah.
poorly? I
Yeah.
mean, and people take offense to that, but it's like, well, if you eat like your mom taught you, and she
Yeah.
eats like her mom taught her, and and it started with them with diabetes, and there's a family history of diabetes, and it's so obvious at some points, but like you look at it, and it is true because you see rises of, like, the medications, the weight loss medication. I have family members on the Ozempic and stuff,
Yeah.
and I'm just so terrified for them.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they're losing weight, but at what cost?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sure they feel the same way about us, like with the keto. Well, you're losing weight, but what about that heart attack you're gonna have? Or,
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot coming out about those medicines, and that's something we can dive into a little bit if you want to, because as a medical practice, I mean, we do prescribe medications if that is what the patient chooses. So we have patients that are on those drugs. Now, when they come in for a first visit with me, they get a whole hour of nutrition and lifestyle and health coaching before we even talk about medication. I won't even mention medication with them unless they are willing to listen to the nutritional side of things. And then when we talk about medicines, we talk about, the pros and cons of drugs specifically for weight loss, because there are pros and cons. There's pros and cons, to everything in life, and weighing those. And sometimes when I get done with that con speech, I don't know how people still say, yes, sign me up, I want the drug, other than they've already made up their mind before they come in that that's what they want. And there's no convincing them otherwise. Um, but drugs do help you lose weight faster, but there's downsides. So there's major side effects with them. Some of them can be lifelong hardcore side effects. Specifically with the Ozempic, Wegovy, semaglutide injections, the new one, tirzepatide that's out there, the Mounjaro, is that bound type thing. It suppresses appetite to the point that a lot of people will burn through muscle mass because they're not getting adequate protein to preserve that muscle mass. It has some severe constipation and nausea that goes along with it that can make some people downright miserable while they are taking it. I've seen a couple of cases you've probably seen on the news, the GI paralysis, where the stomach just stops moving and doesn't start moving again. I've had that in 2 clients that are there, or that I've taken care of. Both of them have slowly regaining their stomach function, but it's taking years, and we're talking years of being off product and feeling nasty and not being able to move through food through your gut appropriately. There's the new links with all types of thyroid cancer. We've always known about the one called thyroid medullary carcinoma, but thought it was specific to rats and not to humans. But now when we're looking at real world data, not the people that have been cherry picked for studies from the pharmaceutical companies. So when you start putting it out there and making everybody a test dummy on it, they're seeing a rise in all thyroid cancers with that. And when I've talked to other doctors, the concern is, all right, we have these GLP-1 receptors, which is how the drugs work. They work on a receptor called the GLP-1. We have these throughout our body, not just in our thyroid, not just in our gut. They're in our brain. They're in, multiple places in our body. So what's going to happen 5 years from now when we've used these on a large scale? Are we going to be seeing a rise in other cancers? We don't know. We're all kind of big test dummies on it. Now, in fairness, the weight loss that comes with those can be equivalent to that of gastric bypass. But also, in fairness, if you don't change your life, if you're just dependent on the drug to help you lose weight, you're going to gain it back. I have, unfortunately, patients on the highest dose of those medications, and they're regaining weight, and they can't slow down the weight gain because they didn't change their life. They didn't change what they were doing. They didn't change their food environment. They didn't change their mind. They didn't work on their stress. They didn't work on their lifestyle. And if you don't change those, these things are just a temporary Band-Aid, and we're just punting the problem down the road. The only problem is we're going to punt it down the road, and we're still going to be on the drug that costs thousands of dollars a month. I don't know how this is going to work out well for us here.
And I had an idea the other day on another live that I was on, the idea that what does it look like if if we are able to kind of get what we want, say we get what we want, and the grocery stores no longer full of carbohydrate laden processed food.
Mm-hmm.
It's all meat, eggs, vegetables, whole foods and things like that. What does that look, if we get what we want, what does that look like? So does that completely, does that destroy our economy? Does that destroy does that just millions of jobs? Does that, the same thing, if you can look at that, you can also look at these drugs and go, well, we're getting what we want right now. We're getting significant weight loss. We're getting, where people are feeling great because they're losing weight, but they're putting up with all the side effects
Yeah.
and willing to overlook those because they're losing weight.
Yeah.
And what does that look like 10 years from now?
Yeah. And not to mention those drugs, I think they're probably going to, our healthcare system's not great as it is. It's not functioning highly well as it is. The cheapest of these drugs, cash pay, is about $600. And that's because the drug company's fronting part of the money. The other ones are around $1,500, $1,200 a month. If everybody who qualified to get on them went on them, our healthcare system crashes in a month or two. We can't afford that cost because they're also meant to be lifelong drugs. What happens typically when you get off of them is you regain weight rapidly. And that's because of their effect on the fat cells. Well, it's one, because people didn't change what they were eating, but two, their effect on the fat cells there, then they just have the propensity to grow even more. So we crash. I don't know the fix. We can't give them to everybody because the healthcare system crashes, but obesity is crashing our healthcare system. I feel like we're just a runaway train that's going to fall off the cliff at some point.
So that's what makes what we do. You do more than me. I'm just a guy who comes on here and tries to have people
You're
talk
getting
about
the message out there to people.
Yeah.
Don't downplay yourself.
But it's still one of those, it's difficult because, I have all of these wonderful people, you included here, and you're doing the things so one of the questions was, what is the conference that you throw or you have been putting on each year? And it's Low Carb for Better Health.
Mm-hmm.
And another question was, what do you have planned for this year's conference?
Yeah. So this year's conference is going to be back at Montgomery Bell State Park. It's August the 23rd and 24th. It's a 2-day event this year. We're going a little bit bigger. So we're going to have Friday afternoon. There will be early registration so people can check in early and it won't be such of a backlog that Saturday morning, because that was one of the issues we identified this year. And then it'll be a VIP dinner that's going to be open to about half of the total conference registration. It'll be sit down with all of the speakers, enjoy a nice meal, open Q&A, mingle, connection, that type thing. And then Saturday is a full day of conference with vendors. Oh, and the vendors will be there Friday as well, so that people can see them as they check in and get to mingle with them there. But then some low carb vendors who, the people that are there have a passion for helping people get healthy. Yes, they're there to make money, but it's their passion too. And you can tell it's their passion. But Saturday we have a lineup of 7 different talks this year. And another meal this year, we're going a little bit different. We're going to do just kind of a handout bento low carb box with a mixture of low carb foods for people to eat, so we can keep lunchtime a little bit shorter and get right back into talks. Ken and Nisha Berry will be back with us again this year. We've also announced that Dr. Christopher Palmer will be with us. He's a psychiatrist who is forming the theory of metabolic health affecting mental health and that connection that's there. We have several other speakers that I'm slowly announcing 1 week at a time. I am super excited. So we're theming this year. This year's theme is never give up. And so each talk is going to be kind of geared a little bit towards that of, we can't give up. We can't give up on our health journeys. We can't give up on our communities. We can't give up in the middle of struggles. So I can't wait to see how Dr. Palmer takes this, thinking of the mental health world, and don't give up in that, because that's one that is really easy to get frustrated and just say, to heck with it. It's not going to get better. So I can't wait to see where he takes with that, and Nisha as well. Yeah, that's just kind of it in a nutshell. Montgomery Bell is a great place. It's beautiful. It's like a little retreat. The hotel rooms are nice. There's also a campground there. So if people want to come in their RVs and stay in the campground, I hope Greg will be back at the Carnivore RV, or RV Carnivore. I hope he'll be back in the campground and connecting with people. It's a good place to go take a hike and be in the woods, even though I don't know that you want to be in the woods in August in Tennessee. The humidity's like, I don't know, 100% or something around here.
Oh,
But it's so pretty to look at. And there's a pond down there. You can go paddle boat or canoe or kayak or whatnot in the lake, pond, whatever that body of water
we
is
had
at the bottom of
split
the
an
hill.
Airbnb last year with
Yeah.
a couple different people,
Uh-huh.
and we had all, like, friends of ours had come down from up near Cleveland
Yeah.
in their RV and truck, and we were gonna hang out, but it was so hot. It was like 100 degrees last year. We just stayed in the house.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that Tennessee had armadillos.
Yeah. It's getting bad. It really is getting bad. They're taking over. And when we have horses on our farm too. We're down to 2 because they're slowly aging and leaving us. But you can't hardly ride because of the armadillo holes that are in the middle of the field now. So
I'd never seen an armadillo in real life, and we're sitting there. And we had the front door open, the screen door, or the storm door was there, and like, here comes an armadillo. I'm like, that's an armadillo.
don't touch it. Don't touch it. You'll get leprosy.
Yeah, that's what they say. They say they have leprosy. Yeah, and I was just like, but I wasn't gonna try to touch it, but I was just like, it's an armadillo. It was cool, but
They're not that cute.
we've got some other questions here. So we've got one here from Erin, Brewing Better Living.
Yeah.
She says, is there a process before getting people these drugs, like counseling beforehand, so they understand that they have to make lifestyle changes along with using the drug? Talking about like Ozempic and such.
Yeah, process in my clinic and process in general are probably 2 different things. So in general, no, anyone with a healthcare license can prescribe these medications. There does not have to be counseling. No, you should, as an ethical provider, go over the risk and the benefits at a bare minimum, and side effects and expectations with those. That should be done. But no, there's not a rule of you have to do counseling or you have to fail so many things. There are some qualifications, such as you have to have a BMI of 30 or plus, so 30 on the BMI scale. Even if you don't like the BMI scale, it's kind of where the obesity range starts for medical coding. Or you have to have a BMI of 27, which is in the overweight category, and another condition such as high blood pressure or diabetes to go along with it. And then it does have to be approved by insurance unless they're willing to cash pay. So there is a PA or prior authorization process through most insurances to say that they meet those qualifications. And not all insurance is cover them. There's actually 3 major carriers here in Tennessee, like the state of Tennessee insurance covers it quite well. But yeah, no process. And the unfortunate thing is we're also seeing all of these compound semaglutide clinics pop up. So the drug, we don't really know where they're getting the drug from, and we don't know the exact, what's the word I'm looking for, concentration of the drug either. So, when it's put out by the drug company, we know exactly what it is. It's formulated, it's monitored by the FDA. Compound medicines are not monitored by the FDA. They don't have to go through any FDA clearance or process. And we are seeing some adverse events and reports of complications. Like there was a news story a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, that 2 people had severe hypoglycemia, low blood sugar effects from a compounded semaglutide injection. And when they looked into it further, they were actually given insulin and not semaglutide. And that's a big difference there, that somebody was just getting Novo Nordisk pins from somewhere thinking it was injectable medicines and tried to water it down and give it as compounded semaglutide, and instead you got compounded insulin and a low blood sugar that could have been life-threatening. So yeah, dangerous.
That raises
Won't
a question.
recommend that.
How is that even legal?
Well, compound pharmacies have been around for a long time, and they were not brought in under the FDA because they were around before there were drug companies. This was kind of like, I think, 1800s. The
Like
pharmacy
apothecary type
compounded,
thing,
yeah, the
right?
apothecary
Yeah.
type stuff. And most of them are, there's some very legitimate compounding pharmacies out there that offer some very good drugs. So I'm not downing compounding pharmacies. I'm downing this one particular avenue of compounding pharmacies. But the law states that if a drug is under a shortage, then compounding pharmacies, so even if it's under patent and still the only supposed to be made by the drug company, if it's under a shortage, compounding pharmacies are allowed to make a bioidentical equivalent to get to the public to kind of ease that shortage. And there has been a shortage of these medicines for the last 2 years, and that's how they're getting around it. Now, when they're no longer under a shortage, I don't know what happens then. I don't know.
So it's like drugs from Timu.
Yeah. Yeah. I've contacted 2 compounding pharmacies to say, I have patients wanting these medicines. I need to know where your manufacturer is, because if my client has an adverse event, I should be able to contact the manufacturer directly. And they're like, oh, it's made in the US. I'm like, okay, that's great. I need a manufacturer name. And they just ghost me and I don't hear back. So I don't really know where they're being made from.
That doesn't sound very good.
No.
We have another question here. This is from Charlie. Darth Carnivore says, first 3 months carnivore keto A1C was 5.8 to 5.5, insulin 3.5. But 3 months later, A1C 5.8, insulin 5.5, lost 166 pounds so far. But this is because of RBCs living longer. What?
Yeah. So he's thinking that his red blood cells are staying healthier, and your A1C is calculated from something off of the red blood cells. And so if they're living longer, your red blood cells go up. No, I don't actually think so. So carnivore diet is not necessarily the same as a ketogenic diet. It can be, but it also can be very high in protein. And you do see a phenomenon when people go very, very high on protein on a carnivore diet, that the fasting glucose and the A1C creep up a little bit, because you still require some insulin and to break down protein. Protein is not completely devoid of spikes in the blood glucose. It does it a little bit. So fat does not require insulin. You could try increasing the fat content in your diet and see if that goes down a little bit if it bothers you. But honestly, those numbers wouldn't bother me at all. I mean, you've lost 166 pounds, way to freaking go. That's amazing. You're making your body healthier in so many different ways. Your insulin is still low. If your fasting insulin is under 7, I'm still pretty happy with you in my clinic. You know, someone that walks through my door with a fasting insulin of 7 or less, I'm thinking you're pretty metabolically healthy. And going from 5.5 to 5.8, I think that's just expected with the higher protein intake. And I don't know that I'd worry about it so much and focus on the non-scale victories and not get too tied up into the numbers. I mean, if you're feeling amazing, your blood pressure's good, you're living a better life, those numbers are great. Don't worry about it. And
There
this
you
is not
go.
medical advice. Please consult your own provider.
Oh, 100%. Look, there's another one. Mr. John Gugahan says, I heard that semaglutide, Ozempic, these messes with your metabolism by bypassing the vagus nerve and directly crossing the brain-blood barrier. Do you know if that's true?
So it doesn't mess with your metabolism by necessarily that. Now, you have GLP-1 receptors in your brain, and there's a strong feedback loop between your gut and your brain. And so if you're having, one of the ways it works is by making your intestinal motility slow down so you feel full sooner and hungry less often. And if that motility is slowing down, it's sending more of those messages, chemical messages to the brain that you're full and that you don't need to eat anymore. How it messes with your metabolism is actually more at the site of the fat cell. So the fat cells, they die off slowly, but they do die off. And when you're on these drugs, the fat cells live longer. So your old fat cells are sticking around longer. And there's actually a phenomenon that's been documented with liraglutide, which is Victoza. It's one of the earlier ones of these drugs. It's not specifically been done with the newer versions, but it showed it increase adipogenesis. So adipogenesis is the growth of new fat cells. Apolysis is the death of old fat cells. So it slows the death of fat cells and increases the growth of new fat cells while you're on these products. Now you think that's a little backwards because you're trying to lose weight. Why do you want new fat cells? Well, the old fat cells are shrinking in size and the new ones stay really small. So you have an overall volume of fat loss. When you come off of these products, and where the metabolism crack is these fat cells emit hormones that go to the brain that tell us that we need to eat. So if your fat cells are really small, your body is thinking ancestrally, if a famine comes, I'm going to die because I don't have storage to feed this person. So there's this chemical feedback loop that goes to the brain. And so your brain is getting this message from more fat cells that it needs to eat and fill the fat cells. And so you're extra hungry. So it in my opinion, that's how it messes with the metabolism. You technically get more fat on your body, more cellular fat on your body, and then the intensity to that grows when you come off of the product.
That's terrifying.
It is a little bit.
But fascinating at the same time. It's fascinating that, because I was always under the impression that fat cells were just kind of with you for life. I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
At least that's
that's what I thought too.
You
know, in the beginning, before I started down this road, I was like, all right, the fat cells that you have are the fat cells that you're going to have for the rest of your life. And they either get bigger or they get smaller, but what is there is there. And then when I learned and read more than what my Vanderbilt education taught me, it's like, oh, okay. Dr. Ben Bickman has a great short video on this process and that particular study. So if anybody's interested, go look at his stuff. He does some fascinating work with insulin and the fat cell and puts out some good information about GLP-1 products and other things too.
Fascinating. Charlie says, I don't want to do weight loss drugs, but I've noticed that from those that take them seems to dampen their cravings and for hyper palatable foods, making eating decisions more sober.
Yeah.
Is there anything to this? So that would be like, so then your brain is basically shutting off the information from the fat cells. And then when you stop taking the medication, like you said, it's like, feed me.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also something with the play of dopamine and serotonin and the neurocannabinoid section of the brain there that the addiction center is. And what is fascinating is with those drugs, we also see people who struggle with alcoholism and sometimes also drug use decrease their use and have a decreased drive for those other addictive substances. So yes, it does quieten the food noise down and it calms down that part of the brain, all because of that hormonal feedback that's there. But you know what also does that? The ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet does that hormonally the same way that the GLP-1s do. So they're calming down the food noise, they're quietening the noise, and they're giving your brain a different fuel. And actually, when you're going higher protein, higher fat, your digestion kind of slows in the same way that these GLP-1 products do. And so you get a lot of those same effects just from changing your diet. The trick is you have to treat your diet like the drugs. So you stop taking those drugs, guess what? All of that comes back. You stop eating in the ketogenic way, all of that stuff comes back. So it's a medical treatment.
Because that's one of those detractors from the ketogenic diet that we've heard. Well, if you stop eating keto, you just gain all the weight back.
Yeah. Stop taking your blood pressure medicine, your blood pressure goes high. If you stop brushing your teeth get nasty.
Byron says, after 15 months on keto, I went off metformin when my A1C got below 5.6. But I have gained 25 pounds since stopping metformin in October while staying on plan. Possible reasons why keto has stopped working?
So one, we use metformin a lot of times, even off-label in the weight loss clinic. It does increase insulin sensitivity in the body. And so something that's hard to swallow sometimes is the damage that we do to our bodies, while it can be improved, can't necessarily always be erased. So could it be that your body is still somewhat insulin resistant and the drug was helping you with your insulin resistance and the diet was helping you lose weight? Possibly. Could it be that it was controlling appetite just enough that you started increasing your intake of things? Not a lot, still eating the same foods, maybe still having almonds, but now we're having 2 servings of almonds instead of 1 serving of almonds, and you're that sensitive that that small change made a difference. Um, you could consider, if you really, really don't want to go back on metformin, consider something like berberine. Berberine is a natural herbal medication or herbal supplement that does a lot of the insulin sensitizing, similar to what metformin does. It could be that maybe your body just needs a little bit longer time to heal itself too.
Yeah, because I mean, if you've been on a drug like metformin for a while, metformin's kind of
Yeah,
doing some of the heavy lifting,
yeah.
and then your body has to learn how to kind of do that without it again, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the other thing that they might want to look at too is what else has changed during that time. So it's not all about the drugs and the diet. There's been many, many times in my life that my diet is spot on. I'm exercising like I'm supposed to. I know I'm doing, and then all of a sudden I start gaining a little bit of weight here. And every time when I step back and look, it's usually because either my sleep pattern's off because I got a lot of other stuff going on and I've reduced the amount of hours that I've slept, or stress has gotten off. And it can even be good stress, like conference time. I have to really watch during conference time because I'm getting busy and I'm going 15 different directions and I might start to gain a little bit of weight. This happened in October. We've had Christmas and Thanksgiving and all those things that can be good, happy holiday times. And even if you stayed 100% on plan, your schedule's different. Things are changing. Christmas is not always the happiest time of the year for everyone. It may not have anything to do with the diet and the metformin at all. It may have to do with other factors.
I think we don't think about those kinds of things
Yeah.
because, I mean, for us, like this last year, Halloween, we were in Disney for like 2 weeks. That's crazy. And that's like you're losing sleep. You're like
Mm-hmm.
putting wear and tear on your body. And then we're eating off plan too. But
Mm-hmm.
then you come right out of that because even if you weren't, then that's like Halloween time is a heavy candy. And then you're coming right into November, which is, Thanksgiving. And then it's never just those one days. It's always like, well, we're going to do that. So let's sneak this in and that sneaks in. And that's something that we're very transparent about on this channel with
Yeah.
on the live streams my wife and I do together. Um, because those things in real life kind of slip in and
Yeah. Sometimes just that little bite here and a little bite there. It doesn't seem like that much. And it can even be on plan foods, but it's more than what your body needs.
he said he did switch to berberine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It may just not be as effective for you.
It could
Or
be in just a time frame.
yeah, I was gonna say you could also split it up to do like mealtime dosing. Maybe it's too much for you to absorb it once. I don't know what form they're taking, but you can split it and do like 500 milligrams with each of your eating instead of a big dose all at once. See if it makes a difference.
He said he went back to metformin last week and the diarrhea is terrible. That doesn't
All
sound
right.
fun.
Maybe you might have to restart titrating up and make sure you're on the extended release dose too.
Yeah, I was never on metformin. I was, even though I got to be over 420 pounds, I never was actually diagnosed with diabetes
Yeah.
or I never went on metformin because I just didn't go to the doctor, which is
Mm.
not a good thing to do. But obviously somebody who's starting, you notice yourself getting bigger and bigger
Yeah.
and you're starting, for me, I was like, oh, now I'm into 5X t-shirts and I'm wearing 50-inch pants. I know there's something wrong. And then
Yeah.
when I started going to the doctor, that's when I was like, okay, I'm 420 pounds now because I needed to have a hernia surgery. I
Mm.
needed to do a sleep apnea test and all these things kind of came at once. And then that's when we discussed like weight loss surgery and all these things. And my wife's an RN
Yeah.
and she was like, no, because she worked in a pancreatic unit and they would see complications years down the road from the weight loss surgeries coming in where they had to be fixed and all that stuff. She's like, yeah, I don't that'll be the last thing we'll do.
Yeah.
So we'll go low carb and so 'cause I never had like my worst A1C, I don't know, it could have been 15, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it could have been really bad,
Yeah.
but I just didn't go to the doctor, as one does when you just kind of get off and go, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
It's not the optimal thing to do. I don't
No, I wouldn't
recommend that.
recommend it. I wouldn't
No.
recommend it, no.
But then I did start going to the doctor, and then I was seeing a doctor, and like my biomarkers were better year over year, and she's still trying to tell me to stop eating red meat. I
I
was like,
know.
I'm eating more red meat, and my biomarkers are getting better. Why would you want me to stop eating red meat? Well, just maybe one day a week. I'm like, so yeah, yeah. So, oh yes.
So you mentioned earlier kids going keto, and that's something that I feel like a lot of my patients struggle with is helping their kids through nutrition. Um, I have two kids. I've talked about nutrition. I've actually had them on a live with me before talking about how mom feeds them so that everybody can see I practice what I preach as much as I can. But it is hard. One, I'd say if you have young kids, don't ever give them the crap to start with. I do regret giving my son that first Cheeto because, man, it was heck trying to get him off of foods like that and then to convince grandparents to stop giving food like that. And my kids are still not perfect. I think, you got to take each kid a little bit different, but what are your tips and tricks for giving your kids fun things to eat, or do your younger kids just didn't have a chance to know any better?
Well, they're not young anymore. So
Yeah.
we've been doing this for 8 years.
Yeah.
So they were middle school, high school when we started.
Ah,
They wanted to
big
commit
pushback
weekly.
ages.
Yeah. So they were not thrilled. And so we went, did a whole house cleanse, cleaned out the pantry, cleaned out everything. And we would do things like we used to let them have like microwave popcorn
Mhm,
and carrots and stuff like that, which is not crazy, but
mm,
and we would, if you're out with your friends or if you're out with family and you go to McDonald's or whatever, have at it.
yeah,
You have that autonomy.
yeah,
You can make choices.
yeah.
And then when they got to the point, like when our older boy went off to college, he basically lived on Jimmy John's. So I mean, it all went out the window. But now he's come
Yeah,
around full circle. So
yeah.
now he's 24, and now he's like back on keto, going to the gym, and he's like getting on to us if we are having like an off day or something. And it's like, wait a minute here.
What's going on?
Yeah, and then the younger boy doesn't care what he eats.
Yeah,
He understands what's good, and
mm,
he understands what he needs to do, but he's 19 and doesn't care. And he
yeah,
doesn't live with us anymore. He moved in with his sister, and but we do have a granddaughter who's 5.
mhm,
And we had more control over her growing up.
mhm,
So she she never like, she like was steak and eggs. And
mhm,
now even to this day, like her main diet consists of eggs and what she calls mac and cheese, which is
mhm.
cottage cheese.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so she's like, I want mac and cheese. So I go get the cottage cheese for her.
Yeah,
And then she does get things like little cheese balls or, and she gets things like Fridays we take her to McDonald's.
yeah,
So I don't think, unless a kid has a true like dietary need, like I had like 2 weeks ago, I had a lady on and her son had severe seizures if he ate
mm,
anything carby.
mhm,
So he had to be very strict, and she had to be very, so like going to birthday parties and things. There was no cheats.
yeah,
Couldn't have cake, couldn't have whatever. But so that's totally understandable. But I think with most little kids, because she's in preschool right now,
mhm,
and they have snacks. They can't bring their own snacks to school
mm,
because of possible allergen issues and such.
mhm,
So she's like, she doesn't like anything they have for her there. But
mm.
she's extremely picky. Like literally, she only eats eggs and cottage cheese and cheese balls.
Oh my goodness. Oh
And,
my
and
goodness.
And even then, like, getting her to sit down to eat is a chore for us because we take care of her 5 days a week,
Yeah.
but just getting her to sit down and eat is the chore because she would
Mm.
rather do anything besides eat.
Yeah.
So, I think managing it the best way you can,
Yeah.
not giving in on Tuesday and getting her McDonald's instead of on Friday,
Mhm.
or sometimes she'll want Costco pizza instead of McDonald's, whatever. She likes Costco samples.
Mhm.
So just knowing that if her primary diet is going to be good, like,
Mhm.
cheese is all she eats. It makes shopping
Yeah.
easier, but I mean, that's my tip is to find what works for them. And if they don't have any severe dietary restrictions as to why they have to be super strict,
Yeah.
then get them into a place where they're comfortable, teach them how to make the best food choices. I mean, she knows I fast. She's like, "Are you fasting, Pa?" Like, yes. She goes, "When are you gonna be done?" So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah, no,
know,
I totally agree with that. My son, we did the whole, "This is what we're making for dinner. You can eat it or you go to bed," and he went to bed crying a couple of nights. He ate the next day. It wasn't a big deal, but he had to learn, just because 'cause you're screaming for mac and cheese, mom and dad said, "We're not doing mac and cheese anymore,
right,
so this is the food you can eat, plus I'm not making 2 meals. That's too expensive to do that."
right.
He's 15 now, or almost 15, 14, 15. Um, he gets the complete opportunity to eat crap everywhere outside our home, and
Yeah,
he takes it every time he can get it, but like you said, you can only control what's in your walls, teach those good nutritional lessons, and hope that one day they're gonna come around to it. My daughter's a little different. She's 9, and she has a severe wheat intolerance, like, she will get horrible GI issues with wheat, and she's just learned, "I'm okay with not eating that," but she still wants to be like other kids. She wants to eat things out of packages. So I love Aldi and Costco that because you can go and find things that are cleaner that's in a package that she can open when she's at school and around with her friends. And she'll still have things like a Rice Krispie treat, like she has a box of Rice Krispie treats that she takes to school. And when everybody else is bringing birthday cakes in for their birthdays, she gets to have a treat. I mean, you still got to let them be kids. And if your kids are fairly healthy and don't already have high blood pressure and diabetes and severe obesity, then absolutely keep your home safe and don't sweat it on the other side of things when they're out and about. Just keep your home safe and teach them the good lessons because they learn. Hey, when I go out and I eat, like last summer when my son went on a youth trip with the church, he came back and he's like, "Oh, mom, I got to eat better for a couple of weeks. This just doesn't feel good." It just
yeah.
he knows he doesn't feel good. And he gets better for a couple of weeks at home and then he'll kind of have some stuff here and there. So yeah, they learn.
They do. It just takes them a while to come around,
Mhm.
and then I get weird phone calls. Like the middle boy called us and he goes, "How do you make your fried chicken thighs?" And I'm like, "Well, I use a big skillet and I put lard in there and I put
Mhm.
them skins." It's like, "Well, what can I use instead of lard?" I'm like, "Beef tallow." "Well, I don't want to use that. What about olive oil?" I'm like, "Olive oil is probably not going to work."
Yeah. Can you use butter? I mean,
I mean,
that'd
I
be a
don't know.
lot of butter.
It would be a lot of butter, and he doesn't have money for butter. That much butter. Surprised he's not eating margarine. Um,
Uh, yeah. Yeah, go get some lard, buddy.
I was like, "It's cheap." Well, I mean, it's not as cheap as it used to be. I think I even have a extra pound I could give him, but,
Yeah.
he's like, "Well, I think there's still that negative connotation with words like lard,
Mm, mhm.
and I think that still translates over to him because he would still rather eat I don't know, he's kind of infuriating in that where I'm like, because we eat chicken thighs, he's like, "I like chicken breast better." I'm like, "Nobody likes chicken breast better. Nobody does. Nobody really. It's dry, and it's got a weird texture.
Unless
Chicken
you're
thighs
coating
aren't
it
that."
in something. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
if you're waltzing in barbecue, then it's no longer good for you anymore.
yeah. Charlie has another question. He says, "What are some of the more memorable health healing stories of your clients that have taken your advice to go more keto?"
Yeah. Oh man, I got quite a few, but one of the first people that I worked with, and I've talked about him before on other shows I've been on. He couldn't make it to from the waiting room to the exam room, which I don't know, maybe 40, 50 feet without having to stop to take a breath. Had severe congestive heart failure, was on 4 different diuretics. And I remember coming out of that consult thinking, he is not going to do jack crap that I just talked about. He was one of those people that just kind of gave me that you're full of crap look the whole time that I'm talking to him. But I remember saying to him, it's like, what do you got to lose at this point? What do you got to lose? You're on a list of medicines this long. You can't walk in here. Give the small woman a chance. Come on. So my first follow-up visit after the initial consult's done through telehealth, and I'm talking to him online, and he's in tears. I'm like, dude, what's wrong? Did somebody die? He's like, no, I can breathe. I was like, what? He's like, I can breathe. I can walk to my car in the morning and I can breathe. He had lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. It was all fluid, but it was fluid that had to go because it was fluid that was killing him, essentially. He, at one point in his journey, had gotten off all of his diuretics, all 4 of them. Now he does struggle with some food addiction issues, which a lot of people struggle with some food addiction issues. And he's on and off. He does not have support at home. Wife is not on plan with him. And so he's kind of halfway on a fluid pill here and there, having to go back and forth, teetering. And we are having to use some meds to try to support him in his journey, just because we're 4 years in and he's still just struggling. I mean, the social support is so important. But he's one of my favorite, just because that first consult and the fact that this guy's crying because he lost 20 pounds and he can breathe. And that was more important to him than anything, just feeling like he wasn't going to die every time he sat down in his recliner or leaned back or went for a short stroll. I had another client that she actually graduated high school with me. She was a primary care person, didn't come for weight, but she had severe psoriatic arthritis and and Crohn's disease. And she'd been in and out of the hospital for a year. Not really overweight, about 10, 20 pounds at most. But I looked at her and I was like, you're in your late 30s and you're just going to die. I mean, your health conditions are this bad, you're going to die. It's like, what do you have to lose? Maybe I need to use this line more. What do you have to lose? It's like, why don't you just try going keto for a short term? Just eat meat and vegetables for a little bit. And she lost her 20 pounds rapidly. She also got off 2 of her medicines that were suppressing her immune system for her chronic health conditions, and said for the first time in 10 years, she didn't hurt. There again, food is tempting and she's sliding back. And it's like, a lot of times people do really, really good, but then they forget. I almost need them to record a video of their why after they feel so much better, so they can go back and listen to it at a later date. I have a police officer right now that I am working with. Amazing guys, and a vet, Army vet, I believe. But he had gained weight after coming out of the military and had goals of making SWAT when he was on the police force. But he's like, I can't run. I can't go. He's like, I'm not going to be able to make SWAT. And I think we're down 70 pounds now. He's completely done it with diet, no meds whatsoever. He's found very helpful. We have a health coach here in the office. He's like, I need to be having that accountability in between the visits with the health coach. But he's like, when I go out, he's still on reserves. When he goes out on his reserves, he's like, I pack my own stuff in my bag because I can't eat the stuff that they give me because it's just going to set me off the wrong direction. But I saw him last week and he had made SWAT and he was about to leave for training and was ecstatic. He said, when I started with you, I could barely get a mile into a run. He goes, yesterday I did 7 without any issues and just kind of kept cruising. Those kind of stories of people that just, it's their everyday stuff. I have another lady. She's down 100 pounds at this point. She's aiming for her next 50. Her first 100 pounds, and she's done this completely without meds. Her total goal was to go to family reunion and have people not recognize her. It worked. But she also was able, the other thing about that is she said that she got on the plane and her two parents have been kind of losing weight with her as well. And she said, we all three could sit in the Southwest seats. She goes, it was still tight, but we all got there. We didn't have to sit in separate parts of the plane because we were too large to sit with each other. And I didn't have to have a belt extender for the first time in my adult life that I can remember. Her next goal is in December. She's going to Disney, taking two of her nieces to Disney. And she's like, I am going to ride every ride that is there because I can. Even if it scares me and I don't want to get on that ride, I'm riding it because I can, because I fit the weight limit and I fit the harnesses. And that's her goal, is to hit that weight mark to where she's able to do all of that. And that's the fun stuff. That the health stuff, that was fun in the beginning, getting people off medicines, but the non-scale victories that just make life fun every day. Yeah, that's the part that's fun now.
People being able to live life.
Yeah.
And that airplane, like, I never had to use an airplane like a seatbelt extender on an
Yeah.
airplane, but there were some times I was like, just one of those things, like, and I don't know what it is. Like, I've lost over 100 pounds, and like
Yeah.
those seats didn't get any smaller. I don't know. There's like, we flew to Colorado last year, and it was
Yeah.
like, did they make them small? I mean, there's only 3 on each side still.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what's happening. I've lost weight and I'm still struggling, but
They may have. I mean,
you never know.
trying to get extra seats in.
Yeah. But I do appreciate you, and I love these stories, and I love the fact that you are putting on Low Carb for better health. I'm gonna do everything I can to be there again this year.
It'd be
Like I said,
awesome.
it's up in the air for me right now, but it is a goal of mine to be there because I
Yeah.
had a great time last year,
And you can
and
come for one or both days. Like if somebody's got something going on Saturday, but they want to come Friday night, they can buy just the Friday night ticket. Or if they want to come on Saturday and not come to the VIP,
yeah.
they can. You don't have to purchase both. You can purchase either. The easiest way to get to the website to look at it, if anybody's interested in the conference, and we'll be posting our speakers there and our people that are supporting us. We have an amazing swag bag, don't we? I think that swag
Yeah.
bag's pretty cool, and we're gonna I'm shooting for even better this year. But it's just LC4BH.com is our website. It's pretty easy. So Low Carb for better health.
And that'll be in the description. I did put it in the chat earlier,
Awesome.
so you'll be able to find that in the description. Before we go, is there anything that you want to talk about that you have not done so yet? Anything you want to plug? Anything coming up outside of Low Carb for better health?
Yes. So I'm doing another event. It's not nutrition specific. It's more spiritually based, and it's for women. It's called Nourish. And it's just making the connection of physical health, mental health, spiritual health. That's coming up on March 9th. The ticket sales end actually this Friday, the 15th. So if anybody's in the greater Nashville area and wants to have a day of uplifting time with women, I have a great speaker. Her name is Christine Trimpe. I don't know if you follow her on social media or not, but she's lost over 100 pounds through a ketogenic diet and her spiritual relationship with Christ. So it should be a fun day if that is something that anyone is interested in. And then just keep following us. We're all looking at some practice changes down the road that could open us up in different areas. So just kind of follow me on social media. You can find me everywhere under DeckerLessCarbs, my name, and then Less Carbs. Yeah, that's about it, man.
Well, I appreciate you being here. It means a lot to me. There's a lot of fun, and I look forward to maybe seeing you this summer.
I hope so. I hope so.
Oh, and thanks again so much for everybody. Thanks for all my subscribers, all of my members. Thank you all so very much. And we will see you next time. Actually, if you are not already, Ready Set Keto told me they're going to be live, and they haven't been live in a while. So go over and check them out if you are so inclined, and we will see you next time.